Most plane doors aren't locked. There are no keys, no sensors or passcodes to secure them. If someone wants to pull the lever, they can.
A man opened the emergency exit door and forced his way off the plane.
And yet, with 40 million flights each year, these doors are virtually never opened in flight. So why not?
It's self-preservation, surely.
Common sense.
Most people are, smart enough to not mess with that.
The real answer relies on where planes fly.
How high do planes fly, approximately?
10,000 kilometers, or is that overshooting it?
I think that's overshooting it. I think you'd be in space.
25,000 kilometers.
That's the height of a plane flying.
Is that way too low?
It's too much. It's too much. Bring it down.
Maybe 1,000 kilometers?
1,000 kilometers, still space.
50,000 feet, I think.
Some of them can go up to 43,000 feet.
30,000 feet.
38,000 feet.
Yeah. Why do they fly that high?
I don't know. Safety, I guess.
Probably to avoid collision with other aircrafts, and if there's high mountain ranges, I don't know, when storms or weather hit.
My guess is to avoid a turbulent weather.
I think that's a decent guess.
Now, it's true that one of the benefits of flying at 30,000 feet is a smoother ride. This is high in the troposphere, the layer in which most weather occurs, so there's less turbulence and fewer storms to navigate around.
But this is not the main reason that planes fly so high. The bigger reason, of course, is money.
As you go up, the density of air decreases, and at 33,000 feet or 10 kilometers, the density of air is just a third of what it is at sea level. So flying at this altitude, the plane runs into a third of the air molecules it would closer to the ground. That means the plane can fly about 73% faster for the same amount of thrust. And as a result, you get to your destination faster, and since you spend less time in the air, you burn less fuel. It seems in a way that, climbing is wasted energy. Can you compare, the descent to the ascent? Do you essentially get the energy back as you fall down the other side?
Yeah. When we climb, we burn about 80 kilos per minute. In cruise, we burn about 40 kilos per minute. And in descent, it's maybe 10. So it's almost negligible.
Not only that, jet engines are more efficient at altitude. They work by compressing air at the intake, mixing it with fuel and igniting it, so the combustion products are ejected very fast from the exhaust nozzle. Now, this process is more efficient the colder the air is.
And at altitude, the temperature is around minus 50 degrees Celsius, which is a lot colder than an average of plus 15 here at the ground.
So flying higher means you burn less fuel, for less time, and avoid the weather and associated turbulence of lower altitudes.
The other reason you want to fly high is to take advantage of the jet stream tailwinds. And the company likes people who do that because you're burning less fuel, so it's less money.
But there is a problem with flying this high. The air up there is unbreathable.
If you were suddenly teleported to the top of Mount Everest, a height lower than planes fly, you would remain conscious for only about 3 minutes. This is because in addition to density dropping with altitude, so does air pressure. Air pressure actually falls off faster because it depends on the weight of all the air above you. So at 10 kilometers, the air pressure is only a quarter of what it is at sea level. To be clear, the air is still 21% oxygen, but the partial pressure of oxygen, the pressure exerted solely by oxygen molecules, is around 5.5 kilopascals, which is a quarter of what it is on the ground. Now, at this pressure, not enough oxygen molecules can force their way into your blood in your lungs. To function normally, humans need an oxygen partial pressure of at least 16 kilopascals. So all the cabins of airplanes that cruise at high altitude must be pressurized. A little bit of air is continuously brought into the cabin from outside. It actually comes in from the compression stage of the jet engines. That is what maintains breathable air inside the plane.
The downside is that you are taking away a little bit of the efficiency of the engines.
Now, pressurizing the cabin required a radical redesign of aircraft.
Before pressurization, planes would fly up to 10,000 feet, or around 3 kilometers, where the partial pressure of oxygen is 15 kilopascals, just at the limit of what people can handle. On these planes, doors opened outward, and there wasn't much concern about the seal around them since the pressure was the same on both sides. But once planes were pressurized, all the doors were changed to be the shape of a plug. They're wider on the inside than the outside. That way, the higher pressure inside the cabin pushes the door into its frame, creating an airtight seal. How airtight is a cabin?
It's pretty airtight, but not completely airtight. So you'll notice, for example, every time that someone flushes the toilet, you'll see some of the air pressure go down. So every time that happens, you can actually see the cabin altitude jump a little bit.
And this is why plane doors and emergency exit doors don't need locks. The difference in pressure between the pressurized cabin and the low-pressure exterior is so great that no one is strong enough to pull the door inwards.
And if someone had come up and turned that while you're mid-flight?
Nothing.
Even modern plane doors that open outward are shaped like plugs. They're just cleverly designed. The main passenger door on a Boeing 737 is both wider and taller than the frame it needs to pass through. But when you pull the lever, gates at the top and bottom fold in, reducing the height just enough. However, the sides are still too wide, so the door first has to pop inside and rotate. It's that movement inwards that is impossible at altitude. It would require a force equivalent to lifting 9,000 kilograms. And airplane cabins aren't even fully pressurized to the sea level pressure of 101.3 kilopascals. You may have noticed this if you take a bag of chips on a plane. It's easy to squish on the ground, but as the plane climbs, the pressure in the cabin drops and the chip bag seems to inflate like a balloon. I measured the pressure in my plane, and at cruising altitude, the pressure dropped to 77 kilopascals, meaning the partial pressure of oxygen was only 16 kilopascals, the minimum required for people on the plane to feel normal. This has some unintended consequences.
Do you think you fart more in a plane?
If I did, I'd blame someone else.
I feel like no. It's no.
No. I can't let it rip. No way in the world.
Do you think you fart more in a plane than on the ground?
100%. No hesitation.
Sure, I mean, it's got to do with the cabin pressure, right? So as you go up, that cavity in here now expands and the air wants to go somewhere. And the quickest place it can go is south.
Bag of chips just popped by itself.
Now, the International Space Station is pressurized to sea level pressure, 101.3 kilopascals.
So why are planes pressurized to the minimum extent possible to carry human passengers? Well, it's actually for a very good reason.
In 1988, Aloha Airlines 243 was en route from Hilo to Honolulu, Hawaii. The cabin was being pressurized as we've described, but unfortunately, this plane's fuselage had a small crack. And all of a sudden, at 24,000 feet, the crack widened and the whole roof tore off the front of the plane. Miraculously, the pilots were able to land safely and only one person was killed. The difference between the International Space Station and a plane is that the ISS was pressurized once and it stays pressurized.
But a plane experiences a pressure difference every time it climbs to cruising altitude. So the fuselage is stretched and then relaxed with every flight. Stretched and relaxed, stretched and relaxed.
The Aloha Airlines plane had the second highest 737 flight cycle count in the world, with nearly 90,000 in total. That's way more than it was designed for.
This led to fatigue, cracking, corrosion, and the eventual explosive decompression.
So planes are pressurized to the least extent possible to minimize stresses and extend the life of the plane. But even 75% of atmospheric pressure should be plenty to prevent the doors from opening. So how did this happen in May 2023?
A passenger panicked and actually managed to open an Airbus emergency exit in flight. They were on final approach then, they were quite close to the ground, so the pressure differential was very little. And because of him using all of his force, he actually managed to get the door open, which was crazy. And we didn't think that that was possible. But if you want something bad enough, I guess it is.
Wow. Was he okay?
He was okay. Everyone was okay in that case.